and welcome to episode 11 of Live from Vaders Castle. I'm your host, Dan, and I'm joined by my co-host, John. Hi, John.
Hello there.
How are we doing today?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm just riding the glorious 0-0 draw from last night.
A waste of my time watching that was.
If you need any context, the reason that you're getting this episode a day late is because me and John were both watching the Euros last night, Scotland versus England. John, obviously, as you can imagine, is an England fan. As you might not have imagined, I'm a Scotland supporter. My accent does let me down. I am Scottish, so it was a good night to be Scottish. Probably wasn't so much of a good night to be English.
No, I mean the England fans, they still celebrate as if we just won the Euros in after a 0-0 draw. So I suppose it's probably a good thing we didn't win. Otherwise, Maidstone would have been obliterated off the map with that celebration. So
there was a lot of people that I saw who definitely weren't celebrating that 0-0 draw. I think a lot of people were quite angry about it. Whereas in Scotland, we were like, "Oh, come on, take him to Wembley, 0-0 draw." But yeah, so that's why we're a day late, but we're still getting the episode out. But we've had an exciting episode of Bad Batch again. Show continues to go on strength to strength.
Yeah, I mean, I watched mine after you and some other of our friends. So seeing your messages in the group chat and being like, "Oh, it was a good episode," I was like, "Oh, class." As soon as lunchtime came around, I was straight on the TV to watch it. Great episode, to be fair.
Yeah, I got straight up and I was like, "Oh, what joy have we got today?" And then I was very surprised by some of the reveals. And then I rewatched it today as well, just to refresh myself and just to enjoy it again, because it was an episode that was worth enjoying.
Yeah, it's definitely one that was worth a rewatch. I didn't have a chance today, but don't blame you.
So obviously, firstly, the episode was called Reunion, which turned out to be a double meaning, really. You know, the reunion that we sort of came to expect was between the Batch and Crosshair after quite a few episodes. But really, the reunion was the fans and Cad Bane, everyone's favourite cowboy bounty hunter, making his triumphant return after must be at least 7 years, 8 years perhaps, since he's last been on screen.
Yeah, probably. I was just trying to think off the top of my head, what was the last arc we saw him in?
I don't think he was in. I think it was season 5 of Clone Wars was the last time we saw him for the. Was it the box episodes or were those box episodes season 4? Anyway, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I mean he's a fan favorite for a reason. So yeah, it's very exciting to see him, and I can't wait to see him some more.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be very exciting. I'm hoping they're going down the route of finally telling that sort of unmade Cad Bane Boba Fett arc that was meant to be in the Clone Wars, but never got made. Hopefully that's where they're going with it. Anyway, we'll start from the beginning of the episode and we'll build up to the big Cad Bane reveal. So we kicked off this episode on Camino, which let's just get this off the bat straight away. I was just like, "Oh, finally, we're picking back up with this storyline again."
Yeah, I mean it's been 3 episodes since we last saw Crosshair.
I think 4
every week.
We haven't seen him
3 weeks.
4 episodes. Yeah, we haven't seen him since episode 3. So yeah.
Yeah, we've been asking every week. We've been like, "Oh, hopefully we see him next week." "Oh, hopefully we see him next week," and he's back finally.
Yeah, and it was interesting because this episode almost played as a mid-season finale, I guess. Obviously, we're not going to have a break now, but if we did, sort of as TV's normally scheduled, this would act as a pretty good mid-season finale. So it's introduce Crosshair at the beginning, the Bad Batch go off and have a bit of growth and development and that sort of thing, and then we bring Crosshair back. I felt like they timed it right, even though they kept us wanting every week. I felt like they didn't long out too much. It was good to have him back and get some of those Camino answers that we've been after as well about the bounty hunter and what's all going on there. So yeah, he's back, and because of the little tip that the scavengers gave to the Empire about the Bad Batch being on Braca, he instantly gets his boys together and they roll through to Braca to eliminate the Bad Batch, which the Kaminoans were not happy about.
Yeah, I mean, we had that little scene with the Prime Minister and the head of science. I always forget their names.
Nala Say and Lama Su, but I don't know which one's which.
Yeah. Yeah, like as soon as the conversation started, I was like, or I think when the Imperial Guard was talking about, the Imperial officer was talking about exterminating the Bad Batch, and like they had cut to that single shot of the Prime Minister's head, and he looked rather concerned. I was like, oh, that must mean that they've hired the. I was like, oh, it's confirmed that they've hired the bounty hunters because they want to get Omega back safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that tied up nicely, I think.
And I think that obviously a little bit later in the episode, but yeah, that scene with them sort of not only confirmed that it was them who hired Fennec Shand, but then he said bounty hunters plural, and I was like, oh no, they've hired lots of bounty hunters, haven't they? And then I was thinking which one's going to pop up later this season? Is it going to be Bosk? Is it going to be Dengar? Is it going to be Boba? Which one could it possibly be? And they didn't keep us waiting that long to figure out what other bounty hunters is on the case.
I mean, I suppose that conversation was actually after Crosshair and all that stuff with the Bad Batch. They all just seem to blurge into one. Some of these, what's happening in these episodes.
Yeah, well, I guess we're even that happened a little bit later. It's still Kamino. We're on what happened at Kamino. So I guess it's fine. We're not jumping too much. But yeah, it's very clear they want to keep Omega particularly alive, which is obviously why they hired Fennec Shand in episode 4 to grab her. We sort of clocked onto the fact that she wasn't trying to kill Omega, so we had this feeling we were correct. And turns out that they also hired Cad Bane and possibly more. I mean, it said bounty hunters plural, so it could be more than just Cad Bane and Fennec. So we'll see if that goes anywhere, even though they've already got the bounty that they were after. So yeah, what did you think about all these the Kaminoans' little machinations here?
I mean, I just wonder how many bounty hunters are going to end up seeing and stuff after this, because I always feel like the trouble is like when you have like these shows and they come out every week. Like every week, you're kind of hoping for like a new character or like a returning character, I suppose. And then as long as it's got to make sense, or like you can't just throw them in there. So I'm kind of hoping that there's some more bounty hunters, but I'm just kind of hoping that it doesn't end up being just like a absolute like ridiculous amount just for like the sake of it.
Yeah, I was thinking that like the War of the Bounty Hunters going on in the comics at the moment. It's like Lucasfilm are just loving their bounty hunters right now. We've got them. We've got the bounty hunters popping up in obviously the Mandalorian, then Bad Batch, and then obviously we got Book of Boba Fett at the end of the year. It's a good year for bounty hunters.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping that it's like similar to Empire Strikes Back, where Vader hires that's probably like 6 to 8, I think, maybe there. And
it's about 6, yeah.
Yeah, I think 6 would be a nice limit. I think any more than that, then you're kind of just being a bit silly with it, just throwing money away at that point to the bounty hunters. But yeah, so, yeah, I'm excited.
It was good to see that obviously the Kaminoans, we still don't know why they want Omega so desperately and what Omega really is. I guess that's the little dangling thread that we might find out next week, now that we know that they're going to have her back in their possession fairly soon. So that is definitely the sort of the lingering thread that's got me the most interested since they sort of introduced it earlier on, is Omega. You know, what is the purpose of her clone? What is her clone's enhancements? Why the Kaminoans are so desperate for her? Because I mean, they're definitely not happy with the Empire. So, you know, what it is they're secretly up to, what they're planning. It's all got me very hooked.
Yeah, I think there was a line from the Prime Minister as well during the same conversation about like their contingencies, which obviously like Force 99 were like their contingency plan. It's like, contingencies for what? Well, obviously, like I'm assuming it's contingencies for like the Empire taking over and no longer wanting clones. Mm-hmm. And it's like, is it like a contingency where Clone Force 99 are meant to be like the best products the Kaminoan have available, so like they'll keep their services, or is it more like Clone Force 99 are going to be like used to like fight against the Empire because they're getting too powerful for the Kaminoans. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah, so you pulled that contingency. Yeah, I forgot about that. They specifically used that word, which I think, obviously, I imagine you're right that it's the fact that the Empire are going to be moving away from clones, and they need some sort of plan to keep the Empire wanting clones because obviously money. So yeah, whatever this big contingency plan that they've got is, I imagine we're going to find out by the end of the season. I imagine it's sort of the big plot of this season, sort of the overrunning plot is whatever's the Kaminoans are up to. But yeah, we definitely got like some more juicy bits this episode to keep us guessing.
I think that's one of the main things from like the episodes that come out weekly is like you need to have like little threads that we can pull at. Because I think if you don't have that, then there's no reason to like come back every week. So I think they've plotting it up nicely. I think it's carried. It's not happening too quickly, but it's like at a good pace where it's keeping you hooked without giving away too much.
Yeah, it's interesting because even though a lot of people say that this really does feel like, season 8 of the Clone Wars, obviously even more now that we've got Cad Bane, but big Clone Wars character back. But like sort of structure-wise, this does feel so much like Rebels in the sense that, every season has sort of like a big overarching plot. The whole of Rebels show had one sort of overarching plot, but then sort of each episode has a sort of little adventure that sort of ties in. You get through a few threads that might lead into the next episode or the sort of conclusion of the season, but it sort of keeps you guessing along the end, and then you get your answers, and then a new threat comes about. So I feel like the show's sort of taking that Rebels structure. And I feel they're doing it really well. I'm really enjoying it. I think the pacing of the show has actually been near to flawless, to be honest.
No, yeah, I agree. Actually, that's a good point. I suppose the Clone Wars, apart from maybe like season 7, I suppose, like towards the end, it was all like, you had like 2 or 3, 4 episodes, and that was it. Like literally, because some of the early seasons weren't even in like order. So you could go from like episode like 13. And then that would then directly tie back to like episode 2. And so I think this is a much smoother way of doing it. And it's definitely a lot more like Rebels than it is Clone Wars. And as you said, it's really well paced. So that's good.
And I think, we'll obviously get onto what's going on with the batch, but I think the time that we've spent these last 4 episodes just really with the Bad Batch, even if it seemed like fairly mundane missions that they were going on, the time that we've spent with them, I'd argue, made the impact of this episode hit so much harder. Like if we had just gone straight from episode 3, which I've seen a lot of people saying that we should have just gone straight from episode 3 and jumped to this episode and skipped all the gap. And if we had made that jump, we wouldn't have the relationship that the batch have got now, that sort of family unit togetherness, with Omega being taken away at the end, would not have hit anywhere near as hard if we hadn't spent the time with Omega the last 4 episodes where you haven't seen Crosshair and the Empire and the Kaminoans and that sort of thing. So I do think that they paced it really well for that reason, because it paid off really, really well in this episode because we've had that time.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think we said this in a previous episode, like about how like you get the emotional endings from like the Rebels seasons or like at the end of Clone Wars, only because you have these episodes where not much is being done, I suppose, but then it's like relationship building. So I think after this episode, it goes to show that they were definitely, in my opinion anyway, they were definitely like worth the time. Yeah, so I agree completely with what you just said. So
yeah. So yeah, where were we? We were back on Braca. All right, this is a moment that actually, one of my favorite bits of the episode was Wrecker teaching Omega how to defuse bombs. I thought this was a really funny little bit at the beginning to sort of kick the episode off. After we got that sort of quite grim opening of like, Crosshair coming to kill you guys. It's like, oh, hey, here's Wrecker and Omega defusing bombs.
That was good. I feel like I've gotten to the point when I watch things now where I just feel like everything is going to end up paying off later. I feel like her learning to defuse a bomb, right there, is going to pay off at some point in the series. And
it'll be episode 15. She'll defuse a bomb, and then we'll be like, Rekka taught that.
Yeah, I feel like I've definitely noticed myself recently, like doing it more and more in like shows where like a character will just do something which just seems like just for like a fun little thing, and I'm like, that's gonna have to pay off later. I feel like I'm building myself up to be disappointed in some shows, but I think it's definitely going to pay off at some point in this show.
Yeah, but I mean, even if that physical action doesn't pay off, it's this growing this bond between Omega and Rekka, which particularly because like last week it was so challenged by Rekka like nearly killing her. And obviously we saw in that episode that she forgave him and she still wanted to have the sweeties with him at the end. But then this episode, to see that their like sibling-like relationship hasn't actually been damaged by it, and that they're still getting on, and like Rekka's sort of like pranking her with like, you know, using a smoke bomb instead of like a real bomb and all that sort of thing. Like it sort of reestablishes the characters and like where they're at. And I think they've just done such a good job, I think, of writing the relationship between Omega and Rekka. In the first few episodes, I was just really impressed with the way that they wrote Hunter and Omega. But these last 3 or 4 episodes, I think they've absolutely smashed it out of the park with the relationship between Rekka and Omega. I think there's so much to like enjoy about their relationship on screen. A lot of comedy comes out of it, a lot of sort of fun and like endearing moments. And I think this was just another one. Like when he was like, "I got you" at the end. He's like, "Do you think I'm crazy?" So yes, Rekka, we all think you're crazy.
No, yeah, it was nice to see that their bond is, I suppose, just as strong, if not stronger than it was before. Obviously, last week's episode where obviously he almost killed her, and it was a very dark and gloomy thing there between the two. So I'm glad that their relationship is back to where it is.
Yeah.
And she forgave him. I think it's good that she was wise enough or like knew enough about the chips and things to forgive him, because obviously you have, like in Rebels, you had it took Kanan a while to like Rex and stuff.
Kanan had 20 odd years to
around. So I'm glad that she's wise enough in her age to know that what the chips do and like to not harbor any hard feelings. Because I feel like you still could, even if you knew what the chips are doing, you know, you still could be a bit wary of someone afterwards. So I'm glad she's wise enough to have forgiven Rekka and realize that he's still, you know, like her brother.
It's actually a really interesting comparison, because obviously we saw like Caleb's sort of initial like Order 66 ordeal, and you know, seeing that and then seeing how long it took him to ever be comfortable standing next to a clone again, and then seeing Omega sort of instantly forgiving Rekka, just is like a really sort of unique comparison there. And it's sort of an interesting one to draw, I think, because Kanan, it took him a long time. I mean, even when he met Rex, didn't even have a chip in his head at that point. He was still, you know, super untrusting.
Yeah. I mean, especially because Kanan is like a Jedi, and I suppose to normal people, you might harbor those feelings for like 20 years. But, you know, a Jedi is meant to not feel that sort of way and like not seek or harbor like feelings of revenge or like injustice towards other people. So for him to hold on to that for that many years probably just shows obviously how scarring it is. And then for Omega to forgive Rekka straight away, I think it just goes to show how strong their bond is.
Yeah, definitely. So after that moment, the super serious Echo arrives, and he's like, right, got to get back to work. And then I think this is a really cool little Echo moment when they were sort of walking across a sort of big open space, and he clocked the light glinting off of the scrappers' sort of binoculars, and then they managed to stun 2 of them before the third one sort of flew off, and Rekka jumps on after them, and they managed to stop the guy flying away, which I thought was a cool little action sequence. It's nice to see sort of Echo in his classic military mood, as he always seems to be at the moment. So yeah, I like that little scene.
Yeah, it's cool. Shows that Echo's still on form. He hasn't lost any of his touch that we've seen previously. Obviously before his supposed death, and then back now. So he's still on form. He clocked the scrappers, and man was still hitting his shots with his one arm. So he's still got skills. Man's still on point.
Yeah. I'm just starting to like, the more sort of time they're giving to Echo now, the more I'm really just like, because I always liked Echo as a character in the Clone Wars, and sort of one of my worries was how he was going to fit in with the Bad Batch when all of them are sort of so unique, and like not just unique, but they're like massive caricatures, and like how Echo would fit within that. But he's sort of become like the straight man, like even more of the straight man than Hunter, and he's sort of always sort of being very military about everything. And I think that that's actually serving a really good place for him as a character, because he, he's not like the Bad Batch. He didn't have all fun and games of just, dominating on missions all the time. He's seen some serious stuff in his sort of time in the 501st. So you can imagine he'd be the one who would take a lot of this much more seriously. And sort of just after this sort of fun action scene when Hunter says that they're going to go and raid the ship for materials that they can sell for money, is Echo immediately, which is just who's saying, should we really be doing this? Why don't we just, like, we're soldiers. We should have gone with Rex. And I thought that was a really good little like conflict. It's not a massive conflict, but disagreement, which is starting between like Echo and Hunter of like what their purpose of clones now actually is. And Hunter's sort of just thinking about survival and looking after Omega. But Echo really sort of wants to be sort of like following on with Rex, continuing the fight. He's a soldier, as he said sort of multiple times. So yeah, I think they got some nice little themes that are developing with Echo at the moment.
Yeah, I mean that conversation, or just like the brief conversation between Hunter and Echo, really drew me back to season 7 with Rex and Ahsoka, when they had that conversation about like Rex obviously saying, they're talking about they've pretty much like ended the war and like how the wars changed their lives, and obviously Rex was saying that the war is the only thing that he's known as like a clone. Like he does, like what would he do without the war? What would they do after the war? So I feel like Echo is, well, Hunter maybe is figuring out that he can have a life outside of like fighting and stuff. Maybe with Omega, he's starting to realize that. I think Echo's still stuck to the ways of like he needs that routine of being in the military and fighting something and knowing exactly what your like end game is.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Hunter's obviously a bit more switched on.
And sort of like, all the batch really, because there was an interesting bit. Well, I know we're jumping all over the place, but we're talking about the same theme here. When Omega was chatting to Tech, and she was sort of asking like, what were the Clone Wars actually like? And his answer was really funny, like line, but it was just like, the primary mission was to fight multiple battles. And she was like, no, what was it really like? And he just said, yeah, I just told you. And like for Tech, he just saw the whole thing as like the mission. The way that Tech thinks. He thinks of everything very sort of, binary factually, straight to the point. Not much emotion really in there. And I think it's quite easy for Tech to like distance himself from the war now, because he only ever saw the war as like what they had to do at that point in time, as like a set of instructions. Whereas I think for Echo, like, even though they are in the same situation, and like the fact that the war is all that they've ever known, I think to Echo it is much more so because, he was surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of clones who are exactly the same as him. Whereas obviously the batch have had very unique experiences. Clone Force 99 was used in missions way differently. Like Echo was sort of just on the cruiser with Anakin, Ahsoka, the whole 501st, going to mission to mission to mission. Sometimes sitting on the cruiser for months on end, I imagine, with nothing going on, but constantly being soldiers. I think that even though there is sort of so much similarities, like I think their shared experience of the war is clearly so different that it's easier for the sort of original Bad Batch members to detach, whereas it's much harder for Echo. And I do think that's shining through quite well. And I think the writing they're really, really acknowledging that and using it to their advantage, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was just thinking, I can really just see like Echo like wanting to like join up with like the Empire or something, just to get that like routine back and just to be part of like, I suppose it's not the Republic, but like it kind of, if he's still fighting side by side with clones, I can see him like maybe at the end of the season, like just wanting to join up as like a recruit. If he can't find Rex.
that would be pretty mad if that happened. I feel like he is definitely going in the direction of like this idea of him going to fight with Rex is almost like more appealing to him than staying with the Bad Batch. Because he sort of always has been the outsider anyway. At the end of his arc in the Clone Wars, he chose to be with the Bad Batch because he thought he'd fit in better there. But now we're sort of starting to see this idea that maybe he would be fitting in better with like Rex and I guess the start of the rebellion, because it's that sort of war that he's more used to as a soldier. I hope that they like really juggle with that sort of idea in his head like for the rest of this season, and maybe that, as you like said, like maybe that question in his head of would it actually suit me better just being in the Empire because I'd at least know my place. And obviously I wouldn't want him to go, but I think it would be nice to see him juggling with that, and maybe he ultimately decides that the Bad Batch need him and he needs them, sort of thing. But I think it's good to have those sort of constant dilemmas for him as a character.
Yeah, I think the only part that I think will put him off is just the Empire's tactics, I think, definitely. But I see like the pro write like a little pros and cons list, and the pros would definitely be like soldier, routine, all this sort of malarkey. And then the cons would just be kill innocent people.
And that would be enough to turn him off the idea.
Yeah. I think the pros list would be a lot longer than the cons, but then the cons would just be
more significant.
Yeah, definitely more significant.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that's going on with the clones. But we'll sort of get to the main crux of the episode, which was their scavenging job of sort of getting the torpedoes and all that stuff in the old Jedi cruiser was interrupted by the Empire arriving, Crosshair and a large sort of platoon of clones and some of the elite clone troopers all arrive, and they start to hunt them down on the ship. What I thought was really interesting is that Tech was instantly like, oh, they won't figure out we're here, I'm jamming their signal. And then Crosshair instantly was like, yeah, our signal's getting jammed. Because he knew that Tech would do, like, when the guy was just like, as interference or whatever, we can't find them anywhere. He's like, oh yeah, we're being jammed. That'll be Tech. That was what we see. That'll be Tech.
Yeah, it seemed like the whole conflict, like Crosshairs was just like one step ahead of them the entire time. Like, I suppose because the Bad Batch were introduced as like a group that like were outside of the box compared to like the rest of the clones that we've seen, and then all their like, I suppose, outside the box or like just the way they do things, just Crosshair was just like immediately knew exactly what was happening and cut them off at like every step.
Yeah, because I think even beneath all that inhibitor chip, controlling his mind, he still knows the Bad Batch. He still has his memories. He still remembers all the ways that they'd do a mission, all their plans. I think in this episode we have another bit when, Wrecker was like, let's use plan 7. So I think even beneath all of that, Crosshair still remembers all of it, and he knows that, something tech related is being muddled with. He knows who's behind it. He, and then even with when sort of they sent the message out, they'd like go to the hangar, sort of trick the batch away from the hangar, and then Crosshair ambushed them. As you said, he was one step ahead of them the whole time, and I think that's because of how well, obviously, he knows them. Which I do think is interesting that they're making such a point that Crosshair can still call back on all those memories, even though in his mind he's still obviously being controlled by the chip. So I think maybe hinting to the fact that Crosshair's not completely gone, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, actually. I agree with that. I mean, yeah, exactly. Because he put the message out to them to go to the hangar, knowing that Tech had already hacked their comms, so they'd hear it. and then cut him off to wherever they went, which is what the armory deck or the cannons deck or whatever it's called. Cut him off there. So yeah, he's definitely not just like, it's not like he's just got the plans or like the memories in his head. Like he, what am I trying to say? He's aware of them enough to come up with new solutions to them, I suppose. So it's not just the fact that he can see these old plans, but like he's smart enough and aware enough to figure out new solutions based on the information he's been given.
Yeah,
so, he's not quite as I don't think he's quite as gone as previously thought, maybe.
Yeah. And I thought that whole artillery room sequence was awesome. Like the tension in that, like particularly when he was just like go straight for the girl, like the fact that, you know, that was pretty twisted out of the whole group. They're just like, yeah, aim for the child. But that whole standoff, obviously, with Hunter sort of, you know, confronting Crosshair after all this time, and Omega being like, remember what I said, like, this isn't you, and trying to get through to him and obviously not working. And Tech behind the scenes is like, yeah, just splice into this artillery echo real quick. I thought that was a really cool sequence, and sort of the action when the roof fell down, and then obviously you had Wrecker doing his usual, just throwing clones out the window, and even Omega got a little moment where she got the bow out and shot a couple clones. I think my favorite takedown of clones in this episode was well, not clones, but like favorite enemy takedown was Wrecker lobbing the proton torpedo directly at the flame trooper's face.
Yeah, I really like that. It's like
he's like, direct hit.
Yeah, absolutely yeets it at her. That did crack me up, actually. He's very happy with himself.
Yeah, I love any way that Wrecker finds to to like defeat enemies, whether it's throwing like one enemy into another, or just lobbing them out of windows, or throwing torpedoes directly at their faces. It's just, he's always got a fun way to do something.
Yeah, the man's creative. We've got to give him that.
Yeah, and then obviously they escaped that little encounter. It wasn't enough to sort of put Crosshair down. He was still about. And they moved into the, what was the description, like the bit inside the ion engines, which I thought, just, we're going to have to take a slight sidetrack here. The cinematography in this episode, the animation, oh my God, it looked incredible. Like that shot where they sort of walked into the big engine room and it was like you saw the whole thing and they were like just shining the torch. You could even see like the dust in like the torchlight and everything. Like the quality of animation is, it's ridiculous. They've just leveled up so much at this point.
Yeah, it's so good. I think Jack mentioned the other week about something with the helmets there, when they were putting on the helmets, the animation there. And ever since you said that, like I think I've definitely found a new appreciation for the animation in this show. I hadn't really realized just how good it was until I think he pointed that out, and then ever since then, It's just been like, oh, Jesus, this is unbelievable.
I feel like the whole season so far, the animation's been incredible. There was something about this episode in particular with like the cinematography, like the colors, like everything. There were some shots of just like Braca in the distance with like all the sort of crashed Star Destroyers when Omega was looking out the window, and it just looks like incredible. Like genuinely looks better than live action a lot of times. So yeah, just the more animated Star Wars they do, the better, because the level of, you know, animation, cinematography. We'll get into the sound design and the music later, but like everything is just so high quality. It's ridiculous, really. Yeah, I just had to mention it because it really blew me away, particularly that shot of the torch shining across the thing, and I saw the dust particles, and I was like, goodness me, they're really going for it.
No, yeah, it's so good. And I thought that like in the couple minutes after that as well, when Crosshairs orders the troopers to like turn the engine on, trapping the Bad Batch between like either being vaporized by the engine or sniped by him. When they turn the engine on, it's like, the colors that came out of the, I don't know, like the ion reactor or whatever it is. As again, looked unbelievable.
Yeah, I loved a little moment just before, like literally just before they got to that bit when Omega was asking about like the engine, and like Tech was giving her like a really big explanation, and then Wrecker was just like, "Shut up." And Tech was just like instantly silenced. I just thought that bit was so funny. I feel like Rick was sort of the audience in that situation. It was just like anytime Tech just like starts going on about something, you're like, come on, Tech, shut up. Who is this guy? Is he like the guy who writes all the Wikipedia articles? It's like, we get it. I do love Tech. I think he's such a great character, and he plays such a good. I think he's one of those characters that, like, on his own, I wouldn't really find him that engaging, but within the team that he's in, I think he works perfectly.
Yeah, no, he fits in really well within the team.
Yeah,
I think they all just bounce off each other really well too.
Yeah. And then obviously the sort of big explosion here was as you said, they were stuck between getting sniped or getting vaporized. So they hatched a little plan to blow the engine in half using loads of little explosives, which I thought was pretty cool. And then they're separated as the thing falls apart. Hunter's with Omega, and then the rest of the boys are together. And Crosshair gets burned quite badly in the face, which at first I was like, you've just been burned by a massive thing, and you've just got a little bit of red under your eye. You've gotten away lucky there. But then obviously later on in the episode, we see him with a Vader mask on, basically. So clearly he did get pretty fried by that engine.
Yeah, that's what I thought at first. I thought, he's gotten away with that quite lucky. He's come across with just some mild sunburn or something on. And then, later on, he's like got like forecasts on. He's got like a mask. He's got like wraps on his head. And I was like, Jesus, this man's been sizzled by this engine.
Yeah,
I'm really interested to see what, like, maybe in that next episode, like he's wearing like some sort of like prototype, maybe like the Death Trooper armors.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I think that the fact that he had that mask on, to me, suggested that he's basically going to be like the Death Trooper prototype. Because I think that's the whole deal with the Death Troopers, is they had sort of a little mask under their helmet as well, and I think they were pretty like scarred underneath the helmet as well. I think they were pretty messed up. So yeah, maybe they're connecting that whole thing together to Rogue One, which would be really cool. So yeah, obviously big action set pieces so far. You know, the Batch getting chased by the Empire. I thought all of this was awesome. I thought there was some really cool character moments. As I said, really cool sort of animation, cinematography. Omega just like playing the part within the show so well. Even she getting some moments to kick ass, but then Hunter having to save her. All of that really good. And that was me thinking, right, that's been a pretty sick episode, and I'm pretty excited by this. And then we sort of cut to a load of dead clones outside the Marauder, outside the Bad Batch's ship. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, here we go. Fennec Shan's back. I did not expect this. Like, do you know the moment that I actually clocked that it might be Cad Bane? It was like when Hunter and Omega's like head like popped up over the little thing, and they saw like all the dead bodies. Like the music cue there like changed instantly to sort of like a really sort of like Western style. It just had like a few sort of like chords on it, which like instantly sort of like sounded Western to me. And I think I didn't like, there was a bit of me instinctually that was just like, oh, could this be Cad Bane? And then on the rewatch, I was like, okay, I now understand why that was my feeling, because it was the music in that moment. So yeah, they arrive, all the dead bodies, and then out of the ship comes the man with no name, the cowboy, Cad Bane himself. I loved the scene so much. I actually thought this scene was chef's kiss. Oh, it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching it, they come out of their ship, and obviously then Cad Bane's obviously like, you know, hand her over, etc., and Hunter, and then they have like the little like standoff. And I was like, oh, it's just so Dave Filoni. Like, he loves it, doesn't he?
Oh,
he loves like the old samurai and Western films. I was like, this is Dave Filoni. He's sitting at his desk, writing off a little standoff, and he's loving it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Cad Bane was always meant to be like like a tribute to Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name from like the spaghetti westerns, like with the hat, and the whole thing about him was very sort of Clint Eastwood. So the fact that, and this is where I want to go off on the music, because the Kiner brothers, I think they've done the Clone Wars, Rebels, and this is them at the top of their game. Some of the scores that they've done have been ridiculous. Like the Bad Batch theme is great, but like the way that they change it based on like the different things that are going on in the show, like just when they were planting all the explosives, they were playing the Bad Batch theme, but it was slightly higher pace and more intense because obviously, they had a countdown, they had a timer. But this sort of like massive Western Star Wars score that they had for this like Mexican standoff. And as you said, it just had like Dave Filoni all over it. It was just like, right, proper cowboy shoot off with Hunter versus Cad Bane, like down to like the hands, like slowly going down onto the blasters, like even the fact that like the music like escalated, and then it cut out, and then it just had like a shot of Cad Bane's like bright red eyes and Hunter's mask, and then the shot came. Everything was just like the most perfect like tribute to those like classic westerns. Everything was just so well done. I love that bit so much.
It was so good. And as they were standing off, I was just in my head, I was like thinking, who's going to win this? Because I was like, obviously Hunter's like the protagonist. So I was like, surely he's got to win. But then obviously we just introduced Cad Bane, who's like a legendary character who's like, I'm pretty sure in every arc we've ever seen him, pretty much, he's been like, he always wins, obviously, because he's still alive. But like he won against like the Jedi when he stole from the council. He wins when in the arc with Obi-Wan in the box. The man doesn't lose.
I'm sitting there thinking, imagine they bring it back after like 8 years and then they just kill him instantly. The outrage.
Yeah, so I mean, he just shot Hunter point blank in the chest. Was so easy. Hunter missed.
No remorse whatsoever. Like it was just
Hunter missed and ended up shooting off the droid's leg. Bot. And Omega gets taken by Cad Bane.
Yeah, that bit was like really like intense, because obviously the whole build up, the shootout, obviously emotions are running high at that point, and then he just like says, sorry girl, and then just like stuns Omega. I genuinely thought for a second he had shot her until I saw like the blue light, and I was like, okay, she's just been stunned.
I actually really thought Hunter was dead as well, like just full on just dead, like he just killed him.
I had a moment when I was like, nah, they haven't just killed my boy, have they?
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, like they've actually just killed him. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then next scene, a few scenes later or something, it cuts to him being like picked up by the other clones in 99, and they like carrying him to the ship while being shot out by the rest of the clones. Turns out he's alive. Don't know how he's managed that, because I'm pretty sure he like rolls over on the floor as well, and there's a blaster bolt like in his back as well. Like, I don't know if that was just maybe I saw something funny, but it looked like he just got a big hole in him.
I think, and they did it. I mean, this scene was just like the tribute to the Republic Commando, the video game. So they were very clever here. In Republic Commando, when you heal yourself with Bacta, there's this noise, and it's just like these 3 notes, like boom, boom, boom. They used that exact noise as soon as it cut to Hunter looking out of his visor. So to me, that suggests that that they had like injected him with like a Bacta or something like that. So I think that's why he wasn't dead, because they used that exact noise, like the healing noise from Republic Commando, and obviously had the shot like through the visor, which is very Republic Commando. I thought that shot was awesome. And obviously, like Wrecker sort of shouting, "Where's Omega? Where's Omega?" and blasting all the enemy in the background. Yeah, I really like that first person shot. I thought that was so cool, and actually seeing what a clone sees as well, I thought was awesome.
Yeah. I really like that shot. I think it goes to show like that's probably why the clones can hit their targets and the stormtroopers can't. It's because they've got a little reticle there and they're cheating.
Yeah, they are. Although he's got like a really like decreased view. Like it really like he can't see up and down very much. It's like it very pushes down his field of view quite a bit.
Yeah. But I mean, it reminded me of the scene in Rebels where Rex is wearing the stormtrooper helmet, and he's like, "I can't see shit out of this" or whatever, like rips it off. So the stormtrooper helmets clearly don't have that little reticle for him. Then, yeah, and a very emotional end to this episode.
I
really next week, I don't know. I'm assuming next week's going to be a lot of time on Camino. Maybe we're going to figure out why. Maybe next week we'll figure out why the Kaminoans want a mega back desperately.
Yeah, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if because I know that I know that they've been working on Bad Batch for years. Like, this is not something that's just recently come up. This is something they've been working on for years, and Filoni's been working on for years. I wouldn't be surprised if they originally had planned this as going out on TV, so that this was going to be the mid-season finale, and we were going to wait 3 months, and then so to me that suggests that the next episode we're going to it's going to be a second half of the season premiere again. So I feel like it's going to be the next episode is going to be a big episode. I think we're going to probably go straight to me, right? Tech's a smart guy. Tech should probably clock the fact that why would a bounty hunter take a Mega alive? Who would want a Mega alive? The only people who'd probably want a Mega alive would be the Kaminoans. Camino's probably our best bet. I feel like Tech's a smart enough guy. I feel like he'll probably figure that out. So I imagine that they might just head straight to Camino, and probably have to deal with Cad Bane, the Empire. And I think it's just probably, I imagine, going to be quite an explosive next episode. It might not be. It might take them a bit of time to gather themselves together, but I have a feeling we're not going to hang about. I think because the episode ends with Hunter saying, "We need to go find her." So I feel like they're setting up straight away, getting into it.
Yeah, I hope so. It really annoys me in shows when I know that we know more as an audience than the actual characters in the show, but it really annoys me when it takes people ages to figure things out. So I really hope that someone, probably Tech, as you said, will just be like, all right, let's just assume the Kaminoans want it. Let's go to the Camino, and hopefully have a nice action-heavy episode or something like that to kick off for, I suppose, as it would, as you said, probably would have been the mid-season premiere.
Yeah, the back half of the season. Yeah. I do think what has me particularly intrigued is obviously what's going on with Crosshair. We saw him sort of jump up and immediately sort of say, "Oh yeah, catch him," whatever. So we know that big hit to the face hasn't, changed his programming or anything. He's still nasty Crosshair. But now he's got loads of burns on him. So as he said, is he a proto-death trooper? How long is it going to take the batch to bring him back? Is he ever going to get brought back? So there's a lot of stuff going on with Crosshair. Still don't really know what's going on with why the Kaminoans are so desperate for Omega. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. They're going to get her back next episode, and we're going to find out straight away what the deal with her is. Cad Bane, all the bounty hunters, are there going to be more? How are they going to play into it? I feel like we're definitely going to see a lot more Cad Bane. I think they've brought him back and fans have got really excited. So I think we're going to see some more. What I would be really interested in is the unused Clone Wars arc is Boba gets the dent in his head, the dent in Boba's helmet. Cad Bane is the one who does that dent in his helmet, and then Boba goes around and kills Cad Bane. So that was the unused arc. It's not canon, so they can adapt it. What I'm think could be interesting is, are we going to see that in the back half of this season sort of take place over a couple of episodes? Will we see young Boba, etc., or are they going to save that and Cad Bane's going to survive this series and ultimately survive all the way through to when Book of Boba Fett's taking place, and we might see a live action Cad Bane? Who knows? So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it. But clearly, big man Filoni's got a plan, because he brought him back. I was very, very excited. I physically fist bumped when I was just yes. When I saw, was when I heard Cad Bane's voice, that very distinguishable voice.
I think my reaction was just oh, something like that. I was sitting in my chair. I was oh, cool. Cringy like that, but yeah, I mean, it'd be a shame. I can't imagine they'd, give him to us in like the last minute of this episode and then do nothing with it in the next episode or one after. So I'm assuming there'll be a lot more Cad Bane to come, which is good.
Yeah. So overall thoughts on this episode? For me, I loved it. I think I said this about the last one. I think this is probably one of the best episodes. If not for me, I think this actually might be my favorite episode now. It's just so much good action. It looked incredible. It sounded incredible. There's some really funny moments, big surprises, some big plot changing direction moments as well, and a big cliffhanger at the end. So 10 out of 10 for me. This is probably my favorite episode of the series so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, 10 out of 10 episode, unbelievable. I genuinely could probably just watch that episode over and over again. It was so good, and it set up so many things that have got me excited. That I just really can't wait for next week's episode.
Yeah, and I think, so far with the Disney Plus shows, we've had Mandalorian, 2 seasons of it, and now Bad Batch. They're knocking it. You got to give credit when it's due to Disney. They're knocking it out of the park. I think the Bad Batch has definitely had so far the most consistently good first season of any of the animated shows by a long stretch as well. It's looking incredible. Taking my hat off to Disney, to the mouse. They're doing a good job. I'm really, really liking where they're going with the show so far, and I hope it continues to exceed our expectations.
Yeah, I think after this episode, I really have got no idea, just how far it's going to go, in quality. So I feel like they're going to be introducing things in the next couple episodes that are just going to blow your mind, but in a way that's just not for the sake of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
There's always a risk that they're going to try and do too much, but I just feel like they've got it absolutely nailed to the point where it's so good, and what they're introducing is unbelievable, but just the right amount, so it doesn't cross over that threshold of being cringy or whatever.
Yeah, and I think the reason that they're succeeding so well of pulling in all these sort of other characters and seeing the world building and all this, the reason that it's paying off is because they've actually just done such a good job of making us love these characters, like the Bad Batch. I liked them in those first episodes in the Clone Wars, but I didn't love them. I thought they were cool, but they've done in 8 episodes, they've taken them from characters that I kind of cared about to I really, really care about. As you said, my breath is taken away when Hunter gets shot there last week with Omega and Wrecker. There's so many moments now where I'm just scared for them because they could die literally at any point because we have no idea canon-wise what the future of the Bad Batch is. So, good characters and a good plot, and you get people actually listening. So, yeah, in Filoni we trust, as always.
In Filoni we trust.
So yeah, that's a good wrap up to our Bad Batch section. We went on for quite a bit there, as we thought we would. It's a bit of a bigger episode this week, lot to talk about. So we were just sort of thinking, because we've had the return of Cad Bane, and last week we were talking about War of the Bounty Hunters. So as we were saying, it's the year of the Bounty Hunters. So we thought we'd nice little segment to finish this week off. We do another top 5 because we love our top 5s, but this time we're going to have our top 5 bounty hunters.
Yeah, it's actually quite a fun list to make.
I'm gonna let the John Lee go first. Give us your top 5.
All right. So number 1, I'm sure it's no surprise, is the boy Boba Fett, GOAT of the game.
I was expecting that.
Greatest who ever lived, especially now in the last year that we've actually seen him do some stuff and not just fall in a pit and die.
Yeah, Boba's had a renaissance, hasn't he? This last year. Yeah.
He's always been my favourite though. Ever since, he's always been my favourite bounty hunter. He's one of my favourite characters, even though it was literally the most pathetic on-screen character. He's always just he's captured my imagination. So seeing him in this last year, Mando in the War of the Bounty Hunters series, and I'm in Book of Boba Fett. I'm assuming it's going to be unreal as well. So yeah, number 1 on my list. Number 2 is the Mandalorian himself, Din Djarin. I suppose now he's not really a bounty hunter. but that's how he started out. You know, he's got to earn his bread some way. So yeah, he's number 2 on my list. Number 3 is the man of today's conversation, Cad Bane, absolute G. I'm sure he's probably on your list as well, to be fair, Dan.
Yeah.
Number 4, I feel like it might be a bit of a rogue one, but you'll see, is Embo. You know, the old fellow with his like shield hat thing. He's got a little wolf. So I was like, I respect that. The man's got a pet.
Is there one point where Embo slides down a hill in his hat? Am I imagining that? That definitely does happen, doesn't it?
It does. I think it's in the arc with Anakin and Padme, and like Padme's like ex-boyfriend.
Oh, Clovis, yeah.
Clovis, yeah. I think it's in that episode. Like he slides down the hill on his hat.
It redeems that horrific arc just with him sliding down his hat.
Yeah, that's a G. And then number 5 is Bosk, just because he's legendary. I mean, he's been, since he's introduced in Empire Strikes Back, I think he's just one of the most iconic bounty hunters of all time. So that is my top 5.
So it's a strong list. Well, I'll read out my list and then we can discuss it a little bit, because I've got a lot of love for Bosk. He's actually my number 1.
Ooh.
And just with a caveat, I've decided not to count Din Djarin from The Mandalorian, purely because, as you rightly pointed out, he sort of starts off a bounty hunter and then within a few episodes sort of just becomes a daddy instead of a bounty hunter. So even like if I was counting him, he would be number 1 for me. He's one of my favorite Star Wars characters, full stop. But I decided, just for the sake of the list and having a little bit of fun with it, I'm not including him because he's just too OP when it comes to bounty hunters. So yeah, my number 1 is Bosk. I think Bosk is so iconic. I remember being captivated just by that second that he was on screen in Empire Strikes Back when I saw it as a kid. And then when I've had my my love affair of Star Wars has come back in the last couple of years, and seeing him in the Clone Wars and him in Battlefield 2, like playing as him in Battlefield 2, and then like finding out so much more about like Trandoshans and like the Trandoshan culture and the scorekeeper, this like god that they worship to, and it's like the more kills they get, the better. Everything about him has just got me really like, and him in the comics as well. There's some great comics with Bosk. So Bosk is my boy. I really like Bosk. Number 2 would be Boba. Boba would not have been my number 2 a year ago, but after his return in The Mandalorian, like that's him on the hill, just like beating people up with his stick, and then obviously putting his iconic outfit on again. And then him at the moment in War of the Bounty Hunters, everything about Boba at the moment, he's just, I always thought he was awesome. He always like caught my attention in the original trilogy, but I was always just a bit like, he's the one that Han killed whilst blind. But now, he's had his comeback, and I can't wait to see more Boba. So yeah, Boba at number 2. Number 3 for me is Cad Bane. For similar reasons, that we've been talking about all episode. From that first episode of Clone Wars, I saw Cad Bane. I was like, oh, this is a bit of me. I love spaghetti westerns. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of my favorite films. So seeing a character which so closely mimicked Clint Eastwood's iconic Man with No Name in Star Wars is just perfect. And then honestly, after this episode, I've just rated him even higher, because that shootout with Hunter, even though Hunter's my boy, like he got played, and I've got to respect Cad Bane for that. And then number 4 and 5, I think, you might be surprised with these ones. This is where we get a little bit rogue. So my number 4 is IG-11. So IG-11 being the IG droid from Mandalorian, not IG-88, the OG one from Empire Strikes Back. The reason I say IG-11 is because I always saw IG-88 and thought that is a weird looking droid, that is a weird looking bounty hunter, but I'm interested. And then when we finally got IG-11 in The Mandalorian, and that like scene in the very first episode of The Mandalorian, IG-11 is a beast. He's just shooting people, spinning around, killing them all. And then as soon as he looks like he might get captured, he's like, yep, I'll blow myself up. I got a lot of respect for IG-11. Like even before he gets turned into the nurse droid, it's voiced by Taika Waititi. He's a badass. You would not want to mess with one of those IG droids. They're scary. And my fifth place, this is a rogue one. You're gonna be surprised by this. But just recently, with some of the comics, I've just clocked. I really like Zuckuss. So Zuckuss, obviously, he was part of the original lineup in Empire Strikes Back. He was the one sort of with the weird bug-like face and the long sort of gown. I always saw him again and thought, that is a weird-looking dude. I wonder what his story is. I have a book which is like the Star Wars version of Where's Wally, and it's called Where's Wookiee? Where's the Wookiee? And I got it years ago, and I just remember going through it, and like Zuckuss was one of the characters that he had to find. And I always thought, this guy's so weird. Like, what is his deal? We know nothing about this. Obviously, he got a story in Legends, but recently he's been in the Bounty Hunters comic quite a bit. He's been involved in War of the Bounty Hunters. His like species have like a really cool thing where they've kind of got like the gift of foresight, and they can sort of predict things that are going to happen, which is quite an OP skill if you're a bounty hunter. Him and Forlorn are just quite an iconic duo. I've liked him recently. He's a bit of a rogue choice, but I just think the boy Zuckuss, I like him.
That's a good list, to be fair. Some interesting choices on there.
Yeah, I had a feeling you might pick Embo. But yeah, Embo's a good choice. I really like that character. Really good. I also was quite a big fan of Aura Singh as well, from the Zabrak bounty hunter from the Clone Wars. I thought she was very cool as well.
Yeah.
And who was your last one on your list? Or was Bosk, wasn't it?
Bosk, yeah.
Well, I think there was a lot of Bosk, Boba, and Cad Bane. They seem to get a lot of love. They're great bounty hunters. We both had them on our lists.
Yeah, top bounty hunters.
And I think we could probably agree that the more bounty hunters in Star Wars, the better, because I think they're great characters. Yeah,
me too. I'm excited to see if we'll get a Star Wars version of Dog the Bounty Hunter. But alas, yet to be seen.
Hopefully one day, like a full-on sort of like filmed in the same style as well.
Yeah, that'd be class.
Right, so I think we should wrap it up there. We've had a good discussion about the Bad Batch, a little discussion about bounty hunters. I'm sure our discussion of bounty hunters will probably continue week on week as more War of the Bounty Hunters comics come out and more episodes of Bad Batch, which are probably going to be featuring more bounty hunters, come out. So if you like bounty hunters, you come to the right place.
When is War of the Bounty Hunters? Is it monthly?
Yeah, it's monthly. So it's 5 issues. I think it doesn't finish till October. So it's going to be a whole summer of bounty hunters.
Nice.
And
class.
The boy Charles Soule tweeted out the other day, he was like, I just finished writing issue 5 of War of the Bounty Hunters. If you thought the final page of issue 1 was mad, wait until you read the final 3 pages of issue 5. And I was like, I'm stressed now already thinking about it. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah. So that's been episode 11 of Live from Vaders Castle. I've had a good time, John. Have you had a good time?
Oh, of course.
As always. So yeah, do all the stuff. Follow us on Instagram. Right, let me get this right. We're at Live from Vaders Castle on Instagram and at Vaders Castle Pod on Twitter. So give us a follow. Follow us on all of the podcast pages. I keep on forgetting to do this one. This is one that you have to do. Follow us on the old Spotify, the iTunes, all of that, so you don't miss an episode. Because we are here every week. Whether we come a day late and drop it on a Sunday instead of a Saturday, we here.
We are here.
Consistent. So yeah, that's been us. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. And we'll catch you in next episode.
Yeah, thanks for listening. See you next week.
Bye.